Good evening, everyone. Mike Palmer from Know Your Rights Group and Success Coaching International with another big, important live video update tonight. Well, it has been a huge 3 days since the last video update that I did on Sunday. Yes, we are now finally able to upload these videos to YouTube again after not being able to do so for the past couple of months, which is great because it just means that our message gets out to a lot more people. There seems to be a lot of people following us on YouTube, which is fantastic. But please understand, if you do only watch these videos on YouTube, you've actually missed about 2 months worth of videos that we weren't able to upload. So if you want to go back and watch those missing videos, please go to our BitChute channel, bitchute.com. Just do a search for Know Your Rights Group channel and you'll find all of those missing videos there, and they're all put there in date order to make it very simple to find. Okay, now for those of you who did watch our last video update, you'll know that it was very different because it was the first video that we've done in a very, very long time that did not mention anything COVID related at all, which was fantastic and very refreshing. Now, we will be doing some more of those videos moving forward, but I do have a bit of a mixed bag of info tonight, so just a heads up, I'm going to cover a lot of info pretty quickly, so you might want to go back and rewatch this video a few times to make sure you get everything. So first and foremost, the big news, of course, of this week is that Daniel Andrews' Belt and Road deal has been officially scrapped. Okay, now for those of you who don't know why this is such a big deal, just let me quickly explain. Okay, Daniel Andrews essentially sold us out to the Chinese. He did a deal whereby Chinese-owned companies would be building the majority of the infrastructure in Victoria, rather than, of course, those jobs going to Australian-owned companies. Now, you don't need to be a rocket scientist, okay, to know that that could only ever be a bad deal for Victoria. Now, that, of course, means, no surprises, okay, that Daniel Andrews was not doing what he swore to do when he stepped into the position as Premier, which is to exercise his powers for the good government of the people. Selling all our infrastructure building contracts out to the Chinese is clearly not good government for the people. Now, the other really great thing that comes out of this story is the fact that our Prime Minister, okay, ScoMo, has finally had the cojones, okay, to stand up and pull Daniel Andrews back into line and call him out on this. Because what Daniel Andrews did is he did a deal with a foreign power. Okay, now that is strictly forbidden by the Commonwealth Constitution. He is not allowed to do that. So it's fantastic to see our Prime Minister standing up and exercising the powers that he has been provided under our Commonwealth Constitution to strike out this unlawful deal. So it seems like just perhaps maybe there is still a little bit of justice left in this world, and in particular in this country. So long may it continue. All right, now, speaking of news, I was actually listening to 3AW just yesterday, and one of the presenters was talking about this new or renewed push for the state government to lower speeds in rural areas, in country areas, from 100 kilometres an hour down to just 80 kilometres an hour. Okay, supposedly in a bid to save lives. Okay, now the presenter, of course, pointed out what a ridiculous idea that was, because, of course, many countries around the world are actually increasing their speed limits because they understand, within reason, of course, that the faster you do something, the more focused you are, the more attention you pay to it. I mean, this is something that the Aussie Speeding Fines guys have been, telling people about in their book and on their website for, a very long time, that it's actually, lack of focus and inattention. That's the biggest killer on our roads, as opposed to just purely anything to do with speed. So this presenter went on to say that somewhere you've got to draw the line. There's got to be a balance between safety and common sense. Okay, otherwise we'd all just ultimately end up just driving around at walking pace, so that there was, zero deaths on our roads. Now, it's interesting. I actually did a quick search and I looked it up, and Monaco, believe it or not, which of course is a tiny, tiny country, is actually the only country in the world that has a zero road toll. So this push that they have, here in Victoria, especially with this Towards Zero campaign by the TAC, is completely, unachievable. It's just not possible within the confines of reality. So what they just keep pushing for and aiming for just makes no sense. Now, this presenter went on to explain that reducing the speeds, especially by that much, would add a huge amount of extra time to trips. It would mean that the cost of transport of goods and everything would go through the roof, and a whole raft of other issues. So it was really great to hear someone, on basically mainstream radio, talking with some common sense. However, there's always a but. Okay, however, this same presenter, just before covering that story on these reduced speed limits, was also talking about the AstraZeneca vaccine and how blood clots only occurred in 4 out of 1 million people, so people should not be at all worried about lining up to get the jab. Now, I must be missing something because I just can't understand this guy's logic. So, I did a bit of research before when I was preparing the notes for tonight's video, and I found out that there's just under 20 million registered vehicles in Australia at the present time. So let's just say, for argument's sake, half of them are on the road. Because not every car's on the road. Some people have multiple cars registered to them. But let's just cut that down by half. And let's just say half the registered vehicles are on the road each day driving around. So it's only 10 million. Okay? Now, if 4 out of 1 million people getting blood clots and dying from a vaccine, and that's not a big deal according to this presenter, then if there's 10 million cars on our road each day, we should accept that 40 people dying on average each day is okay. So 4 out of 1 million, if there's 10 million cars, obviously that means 40. So that should not be a big deal. Now, the reality is there's actually only an average of 3 people a day dying on our roads. Now, of course, none of this is good. I'm not talking about that side of things. I'm just talking about, as I always do on these videos, keeping things in perspective. Okay? So, that's an average of just 0.3 deaths per million, assuming that just half the registered cars, are on the road each day. But the government's still up in arms about this and trying to force people to slow down even more. Okay? And we should all, buy into that, but yet we should all ignore the 4 in 1 million issues with the COVID vaccine. How about we get some consistency from our government leaders? You can't just chop and change. If it's good for one, it's good for the other. There's got to be that consistency. And I've spoken about this, there has to be consistency in the application of the law for it to be meaningful and valid. And it's all the same principles. So it's very simple. Either 4 in 1 million, is nothing to worry about, in which case, great, let's increase the speed limits until we get an equivalent average of, road deaths. Or if 0.3 deaths per million, which is what the road toll currently is unacceptable, as our government and police try and tell us, then 4 deaths per million for the vaccine must also be equally unacceptable. And again, changes must be made, just as they're trying to make changes to the speed limits, to bring those numbers down. Take your pick, but stick with something. That's my message to our illustrious leaders. All right, now, speaking of the vaccine, I actually got a phone call today that really got me thinking. And look, I'd known this, of course, before floating around the back of my head, but it just sort of really hit me. And obviously, in addition to all the work that I do through the Know Your Rights group and through my success coaching business, doing what I can to help people, I also give to a number of charities. And one of those is the Heart Research Foundation. So those guys call me every so often just to say, hey, thanks for your continued support. And hey, here's what we're doing at the moment. Here's some new research or new developments or things like that. So they gave me a call today to go through all of that. And they told me that there's a new drug that's been trialled for stroke victims. Now, this is something I hadn't known about. Apparently, there's actually only one treatment available for stroke victims, one drug, and it has to be administered within 4.5 hours of the first signs of a stroke. So something I hadn't actually known. So I was like, okay, well, that's interesting to know. But of course, what that means is because most people don't take action as soon as there's the first signs of a stroke, they wait. It means that something like 90% of people who have a stroke can't actually have this particular drug because it's too far gone. So apparently now they're trialling some new drug that can be given further after those first signs, and apparently it's been all very pleasing and the results from the trial and everything so far have been good. Anyway, this lady was telling me about all the stages that this drug had been through so far and the stages that it still had to go through. And at the end of the day, she was telling me we're really, really excited because it means that we could actually have this drug available for people right here in Australia within the next 5 to 10 years. Okay? She was all excited because we might have this in 5 to 10 years. Now, of course, my obvious thought, again, obviously I knew this, but my obvious immediate thought at that point, okay, was how on earth did these drug companies get this COVID vaccine ready in just 12 months when drugs take 5 to 10 years to get to market? Okay? And not only that, but how did a number of different separate drug companies all manage to come up with a vaccine within such a short time frame at the same time? Okay, now I'm obviously not in any way, shape or form suggesting that anything untoward has happened there. Of course, it's just completely coincidental. Okay, we certainly don't want to get banned from YouTube again. Okay, but surely it's got to make you think. Okay, now given the number of stories that keep coming through in the media about these blood clots, okay, the huge list of adverse reactions that's listed on that VAERS website, combined with how quickly these vaccines were brought to market, all, mind you, for a virus that 99% of people will never ever get, and 99% of the 1% that do get it will fully recover, you have to look at it in terms of that lowering the speed limit story, okay, that I mentioned just before, and say there's got to be some sensible, logical balance and trade-off somewhere there, doesn't there? Or is it again just, nah, this rule for this and this rule for that, which again just doesn't add up. Now, there have been some really, really great memes that have been doing the rounds on Facebook. And again, I just want to share a couple of those with you because I think they do make some really very clear and concise points that when you see them spelled out like this, you can't miss. So this is the first one that I came across, and it says, COVID really is a true killer. So far, it's killed the flu, cancer, heart disease. It killed the ability to think, logic and common sense. It killed the economy, the working class, and millions of jobs. It killed millions of businesses, human connection, love, and compassion. So when you look at it in those terms, it really does hit home. Now, here's another one. I like this one. This one's been doing the rounds as well. And it says, look, I don't mean to brag, but I've survived all of these outbreaks. Swine flu, influenza, AIDS, Ebola, SARS, coronavirus, white Nile virus, all without a single vaccine. So I'm sure there's a lot of you out there watching this that can say exactly the same thing. So again, let's keep things in perspective. How many things have we survived all our lives, however old you happen to be, without any vaccine? And then this one, I love this one. It just made me laugh when I saw it, especially with the little extra pictures in there. And it says, there's a 99% chance that your car will run fine, but we recommend you service it with an experimental oil that may destroy the engine. Nothing wrong with your car, but do it anyway so others feel better about servicing their cars. Okay? And again, it's a bit of fun, but it really does make that point pretty clear for people. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there on COVID. Okay, enough about COVID. I want to finish off tonight though by referring back to the last video that I did on Sunday in relation to the role of the Queen, the distinction between the title, the Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, as opposed to the purported title of Queen of Australia. And of course, what our Commonwealth Constitution says about all of that. Now, the video generated some really, really great discussion, both on Facebook and on YouTube. And that is fantastic because that, of course, is the exact reason why I do these live video updates. To get people thinking, to get people questioning, and to get people discussing the very points that I raise on these videos. So a huge shout out to all of you. Well done to anyone and everyone who got involved in some of those discussions. That's great, and that's what we want to see more of. Now, a little bit different tonight. I don't usually personally answer comments or questions that are posted on YouTube and the like. We usually leave all the questions and answers to our Tuesday night radio shows. But I did want to just quickly read out this one comment that was posted on Sunday's YouTube because it raises some really good points that I really want people to start thinking about. So this was from Lee. There was a couple of comments back and forth, and this was the last one that he put there. And he says, I find it fascinating and quite worrying. If we assume then that any law passed since 1973 is invalid, would that not mean a vast majority of people in prison today, most deservedly so, he's putting in brackets, are there illegally and have grounds for release? Well, in relation to that first part of the question, I would say partially. I would suggest, and again, I don't know, I haven't done the study, I don't know specifically, but I would suggest that the majority of people that are in prison are there for actual criminal offences, and those criminal offences stem from laws that were made pre-1973. But yes, if they were there for breaches of laws that were made post-1973, then yes, absolutely, they would have an argument, for sure. Anyway, he goes on to say, also, are we wanting to have our cake and eat it too? Does the view that every law passed since 1973 being invalid destroys the advocate me arguments based on the Biosecurity Act 2015? And this is where things get a little bit tricky, so I'll try and simplify it as best as I can, but I will expand on this in other upcoming videos. So this is the beauty of these books, the Aussie Speeding Fines book, the Know Your Rights book especially, and even the Bank Secrets Revealed book as well. And that is that there's a number of ways that you can challenge unjust, unlawful fines, laws, fees, rates, all those sorts of things. There is always a remedy within the legislation, because remember, the people who write these laws are also subject to them themselves. Okay, so there was an instance going back about 10 years ago where the Commonwealth found out that so many people were using trusts and trust structures to minimise tax and all sorts of things like that. So they said, well, we need to revamp the trust laws to stop that from happening. But then, of course, as they started discussing it amongst themselves, they're like, oh, but we're all using trusts ourselves. They'll be cutting off our nose to spite our face. If we make these changes to everyone else, we're subjected to them as well, and we all use these things for exactly the same purpose. So whatever it is, whether it's banking laws or fines or taxes or anything, they're all subject to the same laws. So there's always remedy. There's always loopholes. There's always ways out within the legislation anyway. Okay? And that's essentially the first port of call. That's what we like to share with and teach beginners. Okay, is have a look at the legislation. Have a look at how the legislation is worded. Okay, because there's remedy in there. Okay, now for our more advanced people who've got their head around that, then we go to that next step, and that's when we explain things like the difference between the Queen of Australia and the Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. We talk about the Royal Styles and Titles Act. We talk about no law being validly enacted since 1973. So that's the next level of argument, okay? And then for those who are ready to go beyond that, that's when we talk about that straw man, how you have you are not a person, you have a person, and you can administrate that person. The state creates the person. Okay, and again, if this is sort of making your eyes glaze over and stuff, don't worry. There's an entire chapter on the straw man concept in our ebook. Grab that, have a look at it. But as we have people right from newbies, beginners watching these videos, right through to advanced people. So we want to provide something for everyone depending on what level you're at. So I just wanted to make that point clear for Lee, because and for everyone else watching, because I think it is valid. People say, oh, but if the law's not valid, then why do we have to worry about it at all? And that is correct, as long as you understand that. Oh, but no laws actually apply to me, they only apply to persons. Yeah, absolutely, that's correct, as long as you understand that. So there's different levels for everybody, but for beginners, just stick to the legislation, look at the legislation, look how it's worded, and you'll find the remedy in there. Okay, so moving on, he said, I'd love to know if there's anything being done in the government to fix or preferably completely redo things. Yes, absolutely. That is what Rod Culleton and the Great Australian Party are all about. Okay, so if you haven't looked into Rod Culleton's story, if you haven't looked at all the principles and the constitution of the Great Australian Party, please do that. Just go to greataustralianparty.com.au and have a look, read through all their party policies and look at what they're trying to do. They're trying to get into power so that then when they are in that position of power, they can ensure that every piece of legislation that currently exists in this country is read in conjunction with the Commonwealth Constitution, and it makes sure that it is congruent with the Commonwealth Constitution. And where there are any inconsistencies or any incongruencies, those are either amended or repealed as needs to be, to ensure that every law in this land is directly traceable back to and complies with the structure and framework provided for in our Commonwealth Constitution. So again, a really great question, Lee. Now he finishes off and says, I for one do not like being considered a subject of anyone. If we the people are of any less significance than a group of inbreeding monarchs and oligarchs. Okay, and look, again, that's a fair and valid point. All we're saying is there is another position, rather than standing there as an Australian citizen, you can stand in the position as a subject of the Queen or the subject of the Crown, which is a far stronger position to stand in. Okay, so they're all the different distinctions and all different levels, depending on how much research you've done, how much time you've spent with this, and how easily you can get your head around all this information. So there is lots and lots to learn, and again, these books are the best place to start. Plus, of course, the websites that you'll find in the links in the description. So, as I said, I will expand on a lot of those points in upcoming future videos, but I just wanted to address those quickly because I think they're really important points for people to start getting their head around, start thinking about, and start discussing, especially as we're heading into another weekend. Now, speaking of which, I'm just letting everyone know that my partner and I are going away. We're going to the middle of nowhere. We're going on a much needed camping trip to completely unplug. So no phones, no internet, no emails, no Facebook messages, no text messages, no nothing, okay, for 3 whole days. So I'm asking you, please, I'm begging you all, please, do not send emails through over the next 3 days. The last thing I want to do is return on Sunday night from a lovely relaxing break to an overwhelming number of emails in our inbox, okay, so please. Keep any questions until next week, until Monday, and I'm more than happy to get onto those. We are still a day or so behind on emails. If you've sent stuff through, haven't had an answer yet, we've been flat out. So please just bear with us. We will get to them. But please, if you can do that for us, that would be very much appreciated. All right, and I'm just going to finish off tonight by just quickly sharing the latest testimonial that's been sent through from our friends over at Aussie Speeding Fines. So here it is here from Goja. Hello, thanks so much for your advice. I've just done that and the judge dismissed the case. 5 kilometres over the speed limit, no prior records of speeding charges, no proper signage to warn drivers of change of speed. Over a year ago when travelling in New South Wales, I observed large signs to warn drivers of upcoming speed cameras and change of speed limit signs. None got missed, unlike in Victoria. It would be good to encourage more drivers to challenge some of those fines. Have a great week. Kind regards, Goja. So, again, someone else using the information in that Aussie Speeding Fines book to challenge an unjust and unlawful fine. This is happening on a daily, weekly basis. So if you don't yet have that book, if you're a motorist in this country, please go to the Aussie Speeding Fines website. You'll find a link in the description, and please make sure you grab that. So that's basically it for tonight. As always, I urge you all, please make sure that you make full use of all of the different resources that we have available to you. All these live video updates, as I said, they are going back on YouTube now, but they are also on our BitChute channel, our radio shows, our podcasts, the books, the CDs. Use that info to get informed, get fired up, and get proactive. Of course, the best way to do that, as I keep saying, is through those books. Oh, we've got our lovely tote bag here again. That hasn't made an appearance for a while. Remember, you do get one of those when you get the 3 combo books. It does save you on a little bit of money on the postage. There's a little bit of discount. You can get all 3 books together. Or if one or the other grabs you, just grab that. But please, make sure you get those, read through them, and really start to get your head around that information and start fighting back, as so many people are now. So I'm going to leave it there for tonight. Depending what time we get back on Sunday, I may or may not have time to do a video on Sunday night. But otherwise, we are back live on Tuesday night, again between 8 and 10 p.m. for our radio show. So just knowyourrightsgroup.com.au/radio-show with Darren and Daryl. And just a heads up, we will be reverting back to those weekly shows. So they will be every Tuesday night, at least for the next little while moving forwards. And of course, there being a 2-hour show, we get to go through a lot more information on those. So I'm going to leave it there. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll speak to you next week.